From a political perspective, the timing is what's interesting. Of course, right the day after the elections, the president did state that he was going to use his executive action authority to take this measure on, and so now he is doing it. You know, there are constitutional questions that are wrapped up in this. There are political timing questions wrapped up in this, and then there's also just the reality of the policy. So back to what Bobeth was saying on the substantive side, it is true that executive orders have been issued around immigration for a number of years, both by Republican and Democratic presidents. And so if, in fact, he does issue this executive order, which it looks like he will do, then when the new Congress is seated in January, they will have the ability to come in and legislate, and then that would overtake whatever executive order is out there. It is my understanding that this is going to be somewhat limited in its scope, and so therefore the question becomes, for those it affects, can they then rely upon this executive order, knowing that, in fact, the law may change from a legislative perspective later on down the road?
Regina, what a night in Washington, and it's continuing into today. First off, does the president have the power to make these changes?
So that's the question. The Republicans will say that he does not, that he really went over his scope. The White House has issued a legal opinion saying, in fact, that they are within their limited scope. And you noticed last night when the president was speaking, he actually said there were things that he felt that he could do in this executive order, and there were things that he felt that he could not do, therefore calling upon Congress to go ahead and, as he said, pass a bill and bring it to me. Republicans have made it clear that they are going to challenge it in some form. House Speaker Boehner this morning said that they're looking at all of the options. So, yeah, I think that you will see things coming out of the Congress with regard to this, challenging this particular executive order, but the White House feels that they are on safe grounds. They have spent a really long time, almost 7 to 9 months, looking at the elements around what an executive order would look like, putting the head of Homeland Security in charge of taking a look to say, what can we do and what can we not do, and putting really the scope in that bucket. So, yeah, we're going to see a lot of political controversy coming out of this. But for now, I think the White House feels it's on pretty safe ground.
Well, what about the timing of this announcement? Is it primarily a political move?
Yeah, as in D.C., you know, we talk about this a lot. All things are political. Many are questioning the timing of why now. You know, why do it now? Why not wait for the new Congress to come in? If the president really wants the Congress to give them a bill, why doesn't he put the executive order on the table at that point and then move forward? Others are actually, Scott, now looking back and wondering, should the president have done this before the elections? You will remember we had this discussion about many Senate Democrats who have now lost their seats had asked the White House not to move forward on this issue because they knew that it was a polarizing issue. But many are now looking back to say, I wonder if he had gone forward and made this distinction at that point, would it have made a difference? Hard to tell now. The most important point, this is an extraordinarily important issue for 2016. How will the Republican Party address this issue? What will they look at in whether they do piecemeal legislation or a more bigger package legislation? But in the end, questions around Washington today are, if you're going to attack this, how do you attack it in the context of the 2016 presidential race?
Well, as far as the reality of enforcing these changes, this affects millions of people in this country. Do you think they will actually happen?
You know, this is the question. This is the real people question. This is like what really happens to all of these individuals. Once the executive order is in effect, it is in effect. It isn't law as legislation, but it acts like law. So it stays in effect until legislation supersedes it. As we discussed, there is really a small chance of a large encompassing immigration bill coming out of the new Congress. They have the Democratic bill, which came, or the Democratic bipartisan bill, which came out of the Senate, which is close as they've come, but the House has never been in a position to look at that bill because of their more conservative wing in the Tea Party element. So you're probably going to see legislation coming out of both houses of Congress that's more small bites at the issue.